I'm J. Alex Halderman. I'm a professor from the University of Michigan in the US, and I study computer security and privacy. One of my specialties over the last decade has been looking at the security of election systems in practice. I've done research looking at voting machines that are used in the US, in Europe, in India, looking at internet voting in the US and in Estonia. And in all of this research, my focus has been trying to see whether the voting systems and technologies that people depend on to elect their leaders are secure and private. All of this work has led me and others in the e-voting research community to ask some difficult questions about the kinds of voting technology that are used around the world. Are there ways for people to hack in and change votes? Are there ways that election officials could violate the secret ballot and find out how everybody voted? Election technology needs to be highly secure and to guarantee privacy because it's at the foundation of democracy. Without secure election technology, we just can't have confidence, the kind of confidence that voters deserve to have in election outcomes. I was part of the first study of e-voting security in the US that involved academic researchers actually getting to take apart one of the voting machines used in the US and analyze its security and report to the public how it worked. This was the Diebold AccuVote TS machine, at the time the most widely used voting machine in the US. And we found not only was it possible to tamper with the software and change votes, but that we could make a vote-stealing virus that would spread from one machine to all the other machines and in an entire state, potentially jeopardizing the outcome. I've done other work working with the Secretary of State of California, who commissioned a study in 2007 of all of the voting machines used in the state. In this study, researchers, including me, found that basically every kind of paperless electronic voting machine in use had severe security problems that could change votes or compromise the secret ballot. I've done a study in India, the world's largest democracy, where I was part of the first security analysis, independent security analysis of the country's electronic voting machines, which are in many ways quite similar to Brazil's. And in India, we discovered that it was possible for people to tamper with the country's voting machines, change votes once again. This contradicted claims by the election authorities there and eventually resulted in the Supreme Court of India just last year declaring that Indian citizens have a right to a paper ballot as part of their voting process. And so the election authorities in India are now working to change the way their system works. I did several studies of internet voting, including in Washington, D.C., one of the first U.S. jurisdictions to attempt to build an internet voting system. They opened up their system to public test in a mock election where anyone could try to hack in. My students and I took about 48 hours to hack in, change all the votes, and rig the system so it would play our school's football fight song every time someone voted. Even then, it took 2 days for election officials to discover anything was wrong. They ended up not using internet voting in Washington, D.C. Most recently, I studied internet voting as used in Estonia, which is actually the world's most significant user of online voting, with almost a third of all votes being cast online in recent elections. In Estonia, we focused on a really important new kind of threat, emerging threat to digital democracy, which is the problem of state-level attackers, foreign powers, who might try to hack a country's voting system in order to meddle in its domestic politics. Now, Estonia is a member of NATO and the EU, that's also a former Soviet republic bordering Russia. So there are potentially many poles of power in the world that would want some ability to influence outcomes of elections in Estonia. Using the kinds of techniques that have been disclosed in the Edward Snowden leaks, we describe in a paper that's being published this week several ways that state-level attackers might be able to hack into Estonia's internet voting system and change the outcome of elections. Brazil is a really interesting case, and I've been eagerly following the research and reports that have been coming out of Brazil regarding the electronic voting used here. I've particularly been very impressed by the work of Diego Arana, who participated in the public tests 2 years ago. And even though those tests were conducted under extremely limited circumstances and not really realistic of the full power an attacker would have, Diego and his team were still able to discover just extremely devastating kinds of attacks against the machine's cryptography that could be used potentially to change, that suggest that it would be possible to change votes or even perhaps to figure out how everyone voted. These are extremely severe problems, and who knows whether they've been properly fixed or whether there are other more severe problems waiting to be discovered. We're not going to know unless there's a complete and independent security analysis of Brazil's election system. I hope that Brazil will have an opportunity to do that in coming years, because in virtually every other case internationally where a country's voting system has been claimed to be secure, kept secret, and then only after much debate subjected to rigorous independent scrutiny, the system was found to have severe security problems. I would be happy to lend my expertise as an international expert if invited to take part in any study of Brazil's voting system, and I'm sure many other international experts would as well. I'd like to see Brazil have the kind of secure, private, modern voting system that its voters deserve.